Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and on behalf of Nexans, welcome to the new era of the heat shrink joint, the Nexans JTS, the joint with the triple layer tube. My name is Joe Roberts, and I'm the UK and Ireland sales manager for Nexans Power Distribution Cables and Accessories, and will be leading our webinar today. A couple of facts and some housekeeping before we start. The presentation will only last approximately 30 minutes, and at the end, at around 2:30, we'll have a questions and answer session of up to 20 minutes. Should you wish to ask any questions during the webinar, please use the questions box in the chat room on the left-hand side of the platform. We will also conduct a quick poll halfway through the presentation, but I'll explain to you how to do that when we get there. This session is being recorded so that all registered participants will receive a link so you can watch it again and use for your future reference. Heat shrink jointing technology has been around for many years. Therefore, not many people would have imagined that the accessories industry could release a new and innovative improvement to this already traditional product. Well, here at Nexans, we hope to change your mind during this webinar. I'd like to start by introducing my colleagues, John Rhodes and Marcello Finello, who will take your technical questions at the end of the webinar. Morning, guys.
Hi, thanks, Joe. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Rhodes. I first started with Nexans in 2007 and have held various positions within the company. I am currently the Technical Customer Manager for Nexans PCABU in the UK and Ireland, and responsible for ensuring a smooth interface between the customer and Nexans PCABU from a technical aspect. This includes both accessory selection and on-site technical support, so if you do need any assistance as a result of this webinar, please feel free to contact me via my email address, which will be shown on the last slide. I will speak with you again very shortly when we reach the Q&A, where I will be happy to address any questions that are raised, along with my colleague, Marcello Finello. Marcello?
Yes, good afternoon to everybody. My name is Marcello Finello, and I'm the responsible for the shrinkable R&D activity in PCABU. I'm working in this field since more than 25 years, and with pleasure we will try to answer to all your questions during the Q&A session. Thanks for your attention, and I leave the floor to Joe.
Thanks, guys, and we'll speak to you in a moment. So welcome again, and thank you for taking the time to join us to share our JTS triple layer heat shrink joint webinar. We hope you've taken away some useful information from this session. Just some very brief information about Nexans and who we are. At over 120 years old, Nexans is a French-based industrial company listed on the stock market of Paris. With a turnover of approximately 5.7 billion euros in 2020, our group is one of the largest cable and accessory manufacturers in the world, with more than 100 manufacturing units in 34 countries and 26,000 colleagues around the globe, making Nexans a worldwide leading expert in advanced cable and connectivity solutions. Throughout its 120-year history, the research and development teams of the Nexans Group have always been driven by its customers. For them, all our efforts are into innovation, with over 900 engineers and technicians dedicated to R&D, with over 100 million euros invested in 2020, some of this being responsible for the Nexans JTS heat shrink joint, which we are introducing to you today. We have over 1,800 patents registered in our product portfolio, with a further 59 pending, and we are a clear leader in technological innovation in our sector. And just a quick introduction to the power distribution and cables accessory division. We are composed of 8 manufacturing units, 5 for LV and MV accessories, and 3 for LV and MV cables. These are based in Belgium, Czech Republic, France, Germany, and Italy, with over 1,400 colleagues. Our sales network spans the world directly or indirectly through valuable distribution partners, some of whom are participating in this webinar today. All of this combined means our business is forecast to reach approximately 300 million euros worth of sales in 2021. Our Nexans factory for the new JTS joint is located in a feeder on the Adriatic coast side of Italy and has been developing, manufacturing and distributing its range of heat shrink accessories and mastics for more than 50 years. Experts in this field, the unit employs approximately 50 people with a dedicated team of 4 R&D engineers and technicians. You can see here its figures showing that a feeder has a wealth of experience producing a heat shrink range of components and materials, which makes it Nexans unit specialized in this market. I think it's also important to note that we have expert training centers around the globe providing competency training for thousands of technicians a year on all Nexans power accessory cable preparation and installation skills, with full certification validating the skills of our trained installers. And I make this point as this is where we get some of our quality customer product feedback and our ideas for innovation, as our customers can give us this instantly while they're using our products. So here we go. Let's get into the JTS heat shrink presentation. We'll focus on a number of key points, these being why we created it, why we changed from the standard configuration of our GTS joint to the new JTS version, how we created it, the new components and what they are, the testing that has been carried out, the features and benefits for you of this new range of heat shrink joints, and an overview of our range available. Our existing GTS heat shrink product range is very extensive and highly regarded within the market, covering 3-core, plastic to plastic, transition joints, paper to paper, armoured and unarmoured cables at 12 and up to 42 kV. So I suppose you might ask, well, why would you want to change this? Well, Nexans is constantly assessing the market needs and its own product range. And as I mentioned earlier, taking genuine feedback from our customers. And by doing so, this means we can look at ways of making improvements to them. By listening to our customers, we established 3 main goals that we had to try and achieve. So, what were these goals and how did we achieve them? The first is the installation time. We wanted to look at reducing this. The second is reducing the risk of failures. And the third is making the whole installation process simpler for the installer. We believe simplifying the installation goes hand in hand with the first 2 goals. We wanted to take a good product and make it into a great one. As we know, there are 2 main components to rebuild and restore cable properties within a joint. The first of these is the field-controlled mastic. In our standard GTS design, this is on a roll and needs to be carefully removed from the paper backing whilst being stretched and at the same time applied around the connector with a 50% overlap. All of this being done whilst trying to avoid the mastic sticking to anything else. For single core cables, this can be time consuming and requires a certain level of competency to ensure it's done correctly. But this becomes even more difficult when the installation is taking place on 3-core cables, as we know the gap between the cores can be quite small. Feeding the roll in between the cores without it catching or sticking to one of them whilst keeping the correct tension on the mastic can be quite challenging. Hence the image you see on the left of the screen. You can see here that the technician is really struggling. So what was the change? Well, we utilized a component from our cold shrink joint range, a component that already has proven design. A double layer pad that consists of a field control element and an integrated conductive plate, which also creates a Faraday cage effect. So as you can see from the images on the right-hand side of the screen, now instead of having a roll which needs to be stretched and applied using a 50% overlap, we can simply roll this plate around the connector, and we don't need to squeeze the mastic to try and conform it to the connector. This has made the process much faster and changed a step that, when not done by a skilled jointer, could be an issue. Another important issue that's faced with standard heat shrink joints is parking and shrinking multiple tubes on the cores. As an example, with the GTS up to 24 kV, we have a stress control tube, the GT1, that has to be shrunk first. Then that's followed by the dual wall tube that has an insulation layer and an outer semi-conductive layer. For the 36 kV and 42 kV joints, we have an additional insulating tube called the GT2, which also needs to be parked on the cable. So before the installation of the connectors, all these tubes need to be nested one inside of the other. For single core, they can be positioned over the outer jacket of the cable, and on 3-core cable, they'll park over the individual cores. Once the connectors have been installed, then one at a time, all of these individual tubes need to be positioned over the middle of the connector and then shrunk, one at a time. With all these tubes, it can be a very time-consuming and fiddly process. Also, by having multiple tubes, the installer needs to take care and ensure that no form of contamination enters between them. As you know, having any form of contaminant isn't a good thing, as it can be conductive and potentially lead to partial discharge, resulting in the failure of the installation. So how did we improve upon this? Well, the answer might be simple, but achieving it wasn't, and it did take some time. But we reduced the number of tubes. If we look at the picture on the right, you'll see once we've prepared a single core cable, we now have only one tube that serves to rebuild the cable installation properties and one outer protection tube. So unlike most heat shrink products currently available on the market, which require the separate installation of the stress control element and then the second dual wall tube, with the Nexans JTS joint, there is just one triple layer tube to install called the GT125. It consists of a stress control layer, insulating layer, and semi-conductive layer, which is easily positioned over the middle of the connector. As the GT125 is being installed, the heat being applied to it causes the orange mastic pad underneath to melt, and with the pressure of the tube, it flows around the connector, ensuring there is no air encapsulated. The GT125 has been designed to work in conjunction with the new mastic pad. Another stage that we looked at simplifying is the screening used within the joint. Now, there are two designs available. The standard method that is most commonly required in the UK uses a tinned copper mesh, which is wrapped around the joint body. For copper wired screen cables, a mechanical connector is used to join the screen wires across the joint. Another method that can be supplied and simplifies the joint even further utilizes a tinned copper mesh stocking for screen continuity. It is simply positioned over the middle of the joint and then connected to the screen of the cable with constant force springs. By using this method, the same joint can be used for copper wire, copper tape, or aluminium foil screen cables. It should be noted that the tinned copper mesh stocking is the standard offering for copper tape and aluminium foiled screen cables, but it's also suitable for copper wired screen cables. Using this solution simplifies both the installation and reduces stock inventories by having an all-in-one solution. The joints as standard are supplied with an LSOH adhesive lined heat shrink tube for the outer protection, or if required, they can be supplied with a wraparound heat shrink sleeve, both standard heat shrink or reinforced, depending on the customer's requirements. Okay, so we now like to run a quick poll, please, as I mentioned earlier. If you could use the poll voting button on the left-hand side of the screen to add your vote to the following question. So that's the poll voting button on the left-hand side of your screen. So the question is, do you see the benefits of the new copper mesh stocking and constant force springs for screen continuity of copper wire screen cables? Or do you prefer the traditional method of using a connector to join the wires? So to vote for the benefits of a new copper mesh stocking and constant force spring, please go for A. If you prefer to use the traditional method of using connector to join the wires, vote for B. If you could all vote now, please, and I'll just give you a few moments to place your votes. Okay, so just to give you a little bit more time on that, I'll just read the question out again. Do you see the benefits of a new copper mesh stocking and constant force springs for the screen continuity of a copper wire screen cable? Or do you prefer the traditional method of using a connector to join the wires? For the copper mesh stocking, vote A. For the traditional connector, vote B. Okay, thanks for your votes. We'll share the results with you at the end of this session. And don't worry if you haven't had time to vote, as you can still do so during the rest of my session. These improvements that we've discussed so far become even more pertinent when we look at them in relation to 3-core cables. As we previously mentioned, wrapping the dual layer pad over the connector is much simpler, especially when using it on 3-core cables. Compared to single-core cables, where we can position the heat shrink tubes over the outer jacket, with a 3-core cable, we would need to part multiple tubes over the cores, for which we have limited room. So by reducing the number of tubes, we make this process much easier for the installer, as they now take up less space. By using the tinned copper mesh stocking, as shown on the left, we continue this path of making the installation process simpler and easier. You can imagine and envisage the difficulties that can arise on a 3-core cable when trying to install a mesh roll that requires it to be fed between the cores of the cable, trying to maintain that tension and achieve the 50% overlap. Finally, the joint can be completed, and dependent on its construction, we could fit an armor cage as shown. Then the outer protection will be completed using an adhesive line heat shrink layer. We can see here that for up to 24 kV, we only need to use one tube, which is fast shrinking due to the use of special compounds which make up the stress control, insulation and semiconductive layers. This all combines for a good electrical performance and bonding pressure during the shrinking process. For 36 and 42 kV, we now use only 2 dual wall tubes. Both of these are round, which unlike most extruded tubes, makes it easy to part one inside the other. And at 36 and 42 kV, the installation is faster due to the behavior of the compounds that are used, and because we're now only using 2 tubes instead of 3. And if we now take a moment to look at the kit contents of both the standard JTS joint, as shown on the left, and the new JTS joint, as shown on the right, you can see there are more components when compared to the new JTS joint, which will be typical of most heat shrink joints currently available on the market. And as we know, having less components means there are less installation steps, making it quicker and simpler to install. And again, this is also the same for the 36 and 42 kV joints, less components, less installation steps, quicker to install. Our new JTS range has been tested to Senelec HD 629.1 and IEC 60502-4, both for single core and 3-core cables up to and including 42 kV. So, having looked at the changes that have been made, we can summarize the features and benefits for you of our JTS joint. Tube nesting, positioning and parking issues eliminated. Only one tube to shrink up to 24 kV and only two tubes to shrink for up to 42 kV. Only standard cable preparation is required, so there's no need for any additional training. And a new proven simplified stress control as used in our cold shrink joints. The joint design adapted for all types of brands of mechanical and crimp connectors. And our new copper mesh stocking ensures screen continuity and reduces installation time. Now I'd like to show you the core range of products that are available in the UK today. The kits available now can cover voltages up to and including 42 kV with cross sections from 25 square mil to 630 square mil. Here are a few examples of our customers who are already using the Nexans JTS heat shrink products. Their feedback is very encouraging as they appreciate the innovation, with many saying Nexans provides state-of-the-art heat shrink technology. All the Nexans JTS marketing tools are now available on our Nexans JTS website that we'll share with you after the webinar. Presented here is our 2021 catalogue. You'll find all the main JTS references in an easy-to-use guide to help you with all voltage classes and cross-sections for both single-core and three-core joints. JTS references are clear with modern installation instructions. We have designed them as clear and easy to read as possible. As you will see, we've developed 3D pictures for all elements. And our customers tell us it makes it easier for them, for the installer, to cross-reference the actual installation to the steps shown in the provided instructions. Additional tools that can help you are the JTS heat shrink installation videos. These are readily available on our Nexans Power Accessories YouTube channel. And we'd love you to follow us on our social media channels to find more useful information and any other news on our JTS and as all our other products as well. So, in summary, from the feedback provided by our customers and the information we have shared with you today, we believe that the Nexans JTS heat shrink joint with a triple layer tube has achieved our goals of reduction in the installation time, reduce failure risks, and simplified the installation. Okay, we've now reached the end of my part of the webinar. I'd like to thank you all for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. I would now like to open up the webinar and answer any questions you have with my heat shrink experts, John and Marcello, who will answer the majority of your questions. Thanks very much. Over to you, guys.
Thank you, Joe. There are plenty of questions that's come in, so I do apologise if we can't get through them all. I am sort of conscientious. We've only got 20 minutes, but we will try and get through as many as we possibly can. For the first one, is it foreseen to use the triple layer bodies for transition joints as well? The answer to that is yes. We've currently got them on type test at the minute, and transition joints will be available from around Q2 next year. Marcello, one for you here. How did you test the sealing of the joint against water pressure?
Yes, John. During the type test, foreseen from both Senelec or IEC requirement, we have to test the joint with a depth of water of 0.1 bar, so 1 meter. So 63 heating cycle means 21 days under the water. So yes, our joints are waterproof.
Perfect, thank you. The next question, can we use the JTS with non-Nexans joint contacts? The answer to that is yes. You can use them with competitors' mechanical shear bolt contacts, but you have to adhere to the specified lengths in the instructions. As Joe mentioned on the webinar, the joints are supplied with a 2-layer plate, and one of the plates is a semiconductive plate. So in order for the Faraday cage to work properly, the semiconductive plate has to fully cover the connector. So obviously, if it's a 120 to 300 joint, you wouldn't be able to use a 185 to 400 connector, for example. So the next one, Joe, would be aimed at you. Are there any MOQ to order the JTS?
Thanks, John. Well, we do have a minimum order quantity. It's a value. It's £1,000 within Nexans, but these products are stocked with our distributors within the UK. So we would ask you to inquire the orders via those distributors.
Thanks, Joe. Another question just come up in the chat box for you, Marcello. Where have these types of joints been installed, please, and do we have a reference list?
Yes, we start the installation on the field since 2018, and now we have thousands of joints installed from the central part of Europe, such as Germany, Scandinavian countries such as Finland, and Middle East areas such as Dubai, and in Far East, Asia and Oceania, Australia, New Zealand, and so on. So we have a lot of joints installed on the field with very nice feedback from both the utility that are buying these and the installer that are installing these kits on the field.
Brilliant. And this question has been asked several times. So just while you're there, Marcello, are there any plans to go above 630 square millimeters?
Yes, our intention is to cover the full medium voltage conductor section. At the moment, we are qualified 25 up to 630, as Joe was explaining during the speech, and we will go up to 1,000 or 1,200 square millimeter, both 24 kV, 3642, and also for lower voltage UM12. This is to go toward the renewable energy requirement that the voltage and the cable cross section would increase in the close future. So yes, the answer is yes.
Thanks, Marcello. Another one, do you have the same technology for the terminations? Now, for the terminations, what we have is a dual wall tube, not a triple layer tube for termination. But we do have the dual wall tube, which is called a mono termination, meaning one piece, where the stress control is integrated with the insulation on the outer. So yes, we do have the same technology for terminations.
Correct.
Marcello, are the PD and AC levels for the JTS better when compared to a standard joint?
Yes, thanks for this question. Yes, the electrical performances are better in the JTS compared to the standard joints, because this is due to the one tube design. Insulation thickness allows Glands this withstanding property. So the initial PD value is higher. So due to the fact that we have only one tube, and we deliver in the kit the 3 layers bonded to each other. So the risk to encapsulate air is during the shrinking of the tube is quite to the level of 0, and also due to the good thickness and of the tube, we have also AC withstanding performance is higher compared to a standard design kit.
Thanks, Marcello. And just going back to the reference list and where the joints have been supplied, somebody has asked if we have specific project names rather than just countries. Is that something we could provide after the webinar?
Yes, we can ask to our customer service the projects and the tender in which we are delivering the JTS joints family from. So yes, we won some big tenders in Europe and also in the rest of the world, let's say. But I don't have I don't remember by heart the number of the contract. But yes, we can provide. We have to ask to the customer service this information, but we can do it.
Okay, thank you, Marcello. Another question: do we need special tooling to install a triple layer tube? The answer to that one is no. You will only need the tools that they're used to using to install the standard heat shrink joint. Nothing additional over and above would be required for the triple layer tube. Another one which would be good for you, this one, Joe. Are the JTS joints competitively priced?
Yes, we did some market research on the UK and Ireland pricing, and we know that our joints are very competitively pitched in conjunction or in reference to our competitors' products. So the quick and short answer to that is yes, they are.
Brilliant. And just before you go anywhere, Joe, if I place an order today, when can I expect to receive the JTS?
Well, we have a really good comprehensive range of JTS stocks in our own distribution centre in Castleford, but we also have JTS stocks in our distribution partners within the UK as well. So in answer to that, if you place it AM to Monday morning, you'll get it the next Tuesday.
Fantastic. And just a couple more questions. We do have a little bit more time. If anybody wants to ask any more questions, please feel free. And Marcello, why isn't it possible to use a triple layer tube for 36 and 42 kV?
Yes, because we saw during our research and development of this product that the thickness of the insulation of the tube is a little bit too high, and the shrinking time of a single 12-volt tube for bigger section needs a lot of time to be positioned and shrinked over the joint. So that's why we have decided to use the same design with the pad with a tube goes through the tube round, and that are very, very easy and fast to shrink down on the cable. This is the answer.
Fantastic. And just the last question, I'll answer this one myself, but feel free to jump in as well, Marcello. What are the main advantages of the JTS when compared to a standard joint? As the webinar sort of presented, we have the 2-layer pad as opposed to the strips, which obviously simplifies the joint tremendously. We also have the one tube, because it's a triple layer tube, certainly for 12 and 17 kV, you're only shrinking one tube in the outer tube. So it dramatically reduces the installation time. And also the addition of the copper mesh stocking also removes the need to join the screen wires together. So again, it adds another layer of simplicity to the joint when you compare it to a standard one. Anything to add to that, Marcello?
Yes, you said this, and this is why we did it and how we did it. It is most important. So to simplify And really, the taping over the connector is really time consuming, and the risk to encapsulate air, you know, is high. And with this pad, we really have a good control of a good screening of the connector, good thermal heat dissipator, and we don't have to squeeze or to stretch too much the pad. The pressure of the triple layer tube during the shrinkage of it over the cable to be joined is doing the job. And then also, as during the webinar, we were explaining the differences on the screen connection, but it is a choice of the customer. We solve that with the copper stocking. You really avoid to tape and to put another rule, but this is we can do in both ways. So a very simple and very fast joint to be used compared to the traditional method and design that we have on the market at the moment.
Thank you, Marcello. So I'll hand it back to you then, Joe. There's no further questions.
Okay, thanks, John. Appreciate that. I'm going to give you some contact details at the end of the presentation. It's on the last slide. So if you do have any further questions, or if we've just missed them, then just contact us via email and we'll get back to you. So we've got the results of the poll through, actually, which is interesting, I have to say. So if you remember, the question was, do you see the benefits of the new copper mesh stocking and constant force springs for the screen continuity of copper wire screen cables? Or do you prefer the traditional method of using a connector to join the wires? So A was for the copper mesh stocking and B was for the traditional connector vote. So we had a resounding 71% voting for A, which was using the copper mesh stocking, and 29% voting for the traditional connector. So that's good. We all can see the benefits of that. Don't worry too much, though, because we do have both options in stock in the UK. So we can offer you both options for that. Okay, so there's no more questions and we've shared the poll. So we'll end there this Nexans JTS webinar. On behalf of Nexans, we thank you very much for your participation and your questions. Thanks to John and Marcello for their technical answers. As I mentioned earlier, you'll receive the link to the recorded session and a short satisfaction questionnaire on the webinar. So now we have shared with you our JTS heat shrink joint with its triple layer tube. Please get in touch with us via the contact details in this presentation, or contact me directly should you need any more details or information. Thanks for your time today. Keep safe and goodbye.